Hello, and welcome to Sibling Scribbles. I am Marin.
And I am Johnny.
And today we have a topic that we actually prepared to talk about today.
Yeah, not our MO.
Yeah, this is not a little dump. Those were not the right hand movements for that.
No, it was not. It really wasn't. Normally we are just kind of flow of conscious kind of thing.
I'm like, hey, what do you want to talk about?
I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
Right. But today...
Oh, not this again.
We wanted to talk about something in particular. We wanted to talk about writing advice. More importantly, a very specific piece of writing advice that is handed out like candy.
Like candy full of needles.
Whoa, what?
Check your candy, kids.
That's...
Check your kids'
I want to know
parents.
who's handing out candy so much that there's an entire phrase about it, right? It's like,
yeah,
who's giving out? Stop accepting candy, all right? Just stop that.
Put the bag down.
There might be needles. There really might be. So today we're talking about the phrase "show don't tell."
Ding.
Yes, show don't tell is maybe one of the most popular pieces of writing advice that anyone ever gives, or at least the one that I've ever heard. Every
English teacher tells you to do it, and
it's like the biggest critique that I've seen of movies and stuff.
And I have definitely been someone who has said that lots of times.
Yeah.
Because I hate narration.
Yeah, I really hate voiceovers. We could have an entire episode just about how much I hate voiceovers. I really hate voiceovers. They're just the worst. It's like, I know what's happening. You're showing me what's happening right now.
I know. It's so annoying because they're just like, yeah, that's me. I'm Spider-Man.
It's like I know who you are. We're not doing this. Right?
Shut up. I wonder who this main character is in this movie I went to called Spider-Man.
Hi, I'm Spider-Man. Oh, is that who you are?
Who'da thunk? Okay, anyways, so John is very against show don't tell.
Am I?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I am. I've prepared counterpoints to why not to show don't tell. But first, Marin has prepared points to talk about of why we should show don't tell.
Why you should show don't tell. So a lot of times when you are writing, and especially with visual art pieces as well, I want to get more into that later, but first I want to talk about when in writing. You want to use show don't tell because that is the way that we get into kind of the deeper prose of the character. So we're going to be showing, and so that lets the reader interpret and to kind of take everything in and say, oh, okay, I'm understanding the situation at a deeper level, even though the character isn't letting me in that deep. I understand it because they're showing and not telling. Because you can look in deeper than just that. But there's a lot of problems with that. Because if we show don't tell everything, then the pace is snail slow.
It is just molten lava slow, right?
Yeah.
It is very, very slow.
Very boring.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives you also a way to use linguistic things. What are they called? Skills? Linguistic?
Are you talking about literary
devices?
Okay.
It gives you a shot to use your literary devices and stretch your writing muscles and to kind of dig into a lot of metaphors and similes. You can really just claw into details because you're giving yourself that avenue to do so. But once again, if you get into detail about every single thing and you never actually tell your reader what you want to tell them, then they're just going to be reading forever. Tiny essays basically about somebody's house.
Now, this is kind of different in a visual medium because there are shortcuts in a visual medium. Haley and I watched the first half of The Incredibles this week because, Roy got upset, so we had to, go handle the baby.
Right.
But the first half of The Incredibles is perfect at showing, not telling. The very first, the opening scene of Mr. Incredible saves a cat from a tree and stops the bad guys. And stops, robberies,
right.
And he's able to do it all, right? You literally watch Mr. Incredible do it all and gets married at the end of it,
right?
And so they don't actually just say, like, "Wow, Mr. Incredible, you really have it all, don't you? You can do everything." They don't.
Hi, I'm Mr. Incredible. I can do it all.
I'm Mr. Incredible, and I am pretty great, right? Like, they don't say that.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good example of showing, not telling. Like, some people say, like, wow, you've done it again, Mr. Incredible. Just by saying you've done it again, they imply that Mr. Incredible has done this a lot, right? Like,
yeah.
that is showing the audience instead of just saying, like, Mr. Incredible has a track record of 75 robberies stopped, right? Like, they don't say those things. They just show you what kind of person he is.
Right. Kind of a little side note, when I was younger, I didn't know that he was getting sued.
Yeah? Oh, you didn't understand that?
I didn't understand that as a kid because, once again, they were showing it. And as a kid, I didn't know what it meant to have legal dispute. So. Or maybe I just didn't comprehend that the guy wanted to die, which might be a good
Mr.
thing.
Something didn't want to be saved. Mr. Got something didn't ask to be saved. And the fact that his so-called actions...
That's exactly what he sounds like. Little lawyer mole.
Haley knows all of the lines of that movie. She was saying all of the lines in the voices, like,
so funny.
with the rhythm and everything. It was amazing. The other thing that The Incredibles does almost perfectly. The Incredibles is a perfect movie, right?
It's so good.
It's a perfect movie, but they actually show Mr. Incredible kind of, he's stepping out on his marriage when he's going to do the superhero thing. They use visual cues and they use, like, verbal cues, and they do all these things that kind of show that he is, in a way, being unfaithful.
Right.
When he comes home from the burning building, she's, like, waiting for him, and she turns around in the light, and then she like picks something off of his suit, and normally that would be like another woman's hair, right?
Eyelash,
but instead it's rubble. Is this rubble?
That's funny. I actually never picked that up on that.
Well, if you watch
that's so funny because I understood that he was being unfaithful to her through Mirage.
Right. Mirage is the other way that they show that.
Right. But
she's another woman.
When he's doing the superhero thing at all, he's actually being unfaithful. What a good juxtaposition.
Right. It's really, really clever.
That was great.
Brad Bird shows so much that you understand what the stakes are. Yeah. Constantly in every single shot you understand what's happening.
Yeah.
There's even when he's lying to his wife and he's saying, like, he's blow drying the books and he's like, there's a conference, right? They're sending me to a conference. The shot slowly closes so that it removes Mrs. Incredible from the shot, even while she still has lines and is talking to him, because he's slowly leaving her out of his life. And it's a really small detail.
Gosh.
It's a really, really small detail, but they showed.
Wow.
And it works. You understand what's happening in that shot.
That's very interesting. Yeah, so, like, that is a really good movie of show, don't tell. Like, they don't ever really, like, tell you to your face what's happening. They're like, Mr. Incredible is such a super dad. You know? Like, they don't do that.
No, they do not.
And lots of other things are good examples of that, too. And lots of writing where they, like, describe what's happening and you're like, oh, everything's falling apart. And with things like that, I think it's actually really easy and it's important to use show don't tell, but at the same time, everything isn't doing that. Like, you're not constantly falling apart in a story.
No, you're not. We've kind of blurred the lines on who's taking what stance on this. We're just kind of going now. But
go ahead.
But you're We were going to take like a hard like for and against approach, but this is just such an interesting topic.
It is.
This is really fascinating.
Sorry.
So
Cut that.
You're right. You're right. It's really fascinating to kind of see when showing and telling is actually very appropriate. There's actually a very good reason to show and a very good reason to tell.
Yeah.
And a YouTube comment on one of the videos that I was watching about this says, I forgot to say who this is. Oh, that's too bad. My rule of thumb has always been, if the reader needs to feel, show. If the reader just needs to know, tell.
Okay, say that again.
If the reader needs to feel, show. If the reader needs to know, tell. This is also coming from a writing perspective, like a novel perspective.
Right.
Right. So in a novel perspective, you do kind of have to literally explain some things sometimes. In visual mediums, it's a little different because you can explain things to people without explicitly saying, like, oh, the Fire Lord wiped out all of the air nomads, even my dad, right? Like,
Bum, bum,
bum. Right? Like, you don't have to say that. You can still show aspects of things that you know that people are going to see.
Right.
Or that people are going to feel. You can show things that people need to know, right?
Right. I have my notes on my computer. So I watched this one guy on YouTube, and he was describing why you should not show don't tell, and in situations where it worked, in situations where it didn't. But something that he said that I thought was really interesting was describe the symptoms of the emotion.
Oh my gosh, we watched the same video. All right, I'll pull it up so I can plug him. Go ahead.
Describe the symptoms of the emotion, but not the emotion itself.
Why did you like that?
I like that because he kind of gets into describing feeling action. So a lot of times in religion, something that is brought up a lot. This is, not from his video. This was something that I thought of when you think something that is, let's say, like sinful or we don't really want in our lives, when you think of something, that influences what we say, and what we say dictates what our actions are, and then our actions become habits become lifestyles. Your lifestyle makes you who you are.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing with your characters. If they have a feeling, that dictates an action. So it kind of jumps from like thoughts to action. But it's like when they feel something, it goes directly to the action. And so that cycle just keeps going until that feeling is resolved. So you need to be showing that they have like consequences for the things that they're feeling, and not just, oh, I'm sad, and then like that's the end of that.
Right.
No one cares.
If you're going to describe an emotion, there needs to be a consequence to the emotion.
Right.
Because the emotions and the thoughts are actually, in a way, they're kind of like proto-actions. Right? So if an action has a consequence, then a thought or an emotion will have an action come out of it. And that action will then have a consequence, right? Like it's a precursor to events.
Right. It needs to not be like, oh, Tom was sad. His mom was really happy and did the dishes.
Right. Tom was sad, so Tom did something about it, right? Tom felt these things, so Tom approached the next situation from that perspective. Emotions aren't just something that happen to you. They're things that affect the next thing that you do. Really quick, the video is called "Show Don't Tell is a Lie" by Hello Future Me, and the comment that I said earlier is by Nathan Hall 9345. Love you, Nathan Hall 9345.
I don't.
What?
I'm married.
What? I think that I like the video. I think that the video does ramble and go into a few different areas.
I kind of skipped around to the topics.
Right. Yeah.
Whenever he had animation on the screen, I was like, ooh, a
pretty,
point.
Yeah. Well, that's very indicative. I think that he makes some great points, right? If you're going to have Miles Morales be at his lowest point, what does that lowest point inspire him to do, right? The shot of him like jumping off of the building upside down, which is like the coolest shot in the whole movie.
Oh, so sick.
The reason that movie works so well is because it is the payoff of lots and lots of emotions throughout the books, throughout the movie. I started thinking about a series that I'd read recently. So it can be sometimes, while Marion's doing something, I was reading the Stormlight Archive, which is massive brick-sized books, that they will sit on people's emotions for a while. And because these books are so stinking long, that it sometimes feels like you're just wallowing and just friggin' just trudging through emotions for a really long time and before anyone even acts on them.
Right.
And sometimes emotions don't get acted. Like, a character won't have a POV for 500 pages.
Right.
So it's like, well, I just read through like 3 chapters of this idiot and now I don't even have any payoff for what they're doing. Right. And it
kind of depends where you are too, like emotionally, because I have a really good friend of mine, and she has like been going through the grieving process, and she's been reading the Stormlight Archives, and she's like, I have never felt more seen. And I am like, that's cool, but what about everyone who isn't grieving? How are they supposed to read it?
Right. The Stormlight Archive the Stormlight Archive really, really tries to tackle very heavy mental health issues throughout all of their books. And the problem that I had with it is that the mental health issues that I have are not like depression from being a slave and
Can relate.
Right. Or like being a soldier who cannot save anybody, so everyone in his life dies. It's like, oh, all right, well, that's a bit much.
That's the same thing as me not wanting to make dinner tonight.
Yes, that is something I can relate to. And so on the one hand, it's amazing what the books do when they finally do reach those heights. Though that build up for thousands of pages is magnificent. But it is my biggest critique of the Stormlight Archive, biggest critique of Brandon Sanderson, is that the books drag. And it is because he tells a lot when he should be showing. Right.
That's something that this very important article talks about.
Chat GPT.
That's the author. First name Chat. It's French.
It's pronounced Chat.
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 Holy Chat.
Holy Chat GPT.
So my friend Chat. My friend Shoot. It's Shoot GPT actually.
Shucks gosh darn it.
Shucks gosh darn 'em all. GPT.
The G stands for gosh darn 'em all. All right, we gotta keep moving.
Okay, so it says that reader fatigue is something that is really a problem when it comes to show don't tell.
Oh yeah, that's true. Both ways.
Yes. If you show too much, the reader's like, oh my gosh. And if you tell too much, they're like, can you talk about, like, can you just show me a pretty picture?
Yeah.
Like, tell me about the mushrooms, okay?
Yeah, just anything will do. Anything will do.
How did the pie smell? I'd like to smell a pie.
Yeah. I remember I was helping Uncle Nate fix a roof. And they were making apple cake. And it wasn't for me, it was for someone else. Yeah. But I remember smelling it and I thought to myself, I hope death smells like apple cake. And he gave me this look like, I think you should see a therapist. I haven't, but I just had the thought, like, it is comfortable, and it is like familiar, and it's kind of warm, and carbs and sugar and delicious.
You had me at carbs.
And I don't think that was like a moment of creative brilliance, but
Yeah.
take a moment to like actually, like you said earlier, and like Hello Future Me says, the similes and metaphors that you use actually help enrapture the audience in these emotions.
That's embarrassing.
Telling is important, though.
Yeah.
Telling is really important, though, because audiences need context for things to make sense, for things to matter.
Imagine if nobody actually said their name. If no one told you what the character's name was.
Huh.
They seemed like a warm person. Like their name would give me feelings of the fall when the wind is cold, but your scarf is warm. She said hello.
She said, "Hey." She dabbed me up like a cold winter wind.
The shadows under her eyes begged for impending doom.
And she said, "OM balls."
OM balls, Alana.
I am such a. What is it? This is a TikTok. We're recording a TikTok. Marion, go ahead.
Just a snatched rat with sus ankles.
Seth Kinkles.
All right.
Holy crap! That is another writing problem. That is when older writers try to write teenager characters with slang.
OM balls, Alana, said Kaladin.
Said Kaladin.
Frodo Baggins.
But Gandalf, I'm just a short stack. What is it? I'm
just a short king, Gandalf. I can't do it on my own.
I'm just a dumb thick. I'm just a dumb thick hobbit.
But you're such a dumb thick snack.
You're such a dumb. But you're such a dumb thick snack. I'm gonna have to cut this. I have to cut this. This is going too long.
Okay.
I think that.
But was Frodo literally a dumb thick snack?
He certainly had a lot of them. He had a lot of dumb snacks throughout the story.
Frodo. And a list of dumb thick snacks. And back it then.
That sounds like, and back again. Frodo and the Dumb Thick Snacks sounds like the name of the Hobbit band that he's in.
Merry and Pippin.
Right, yeah. Well, the Pippin is the dumb, Sam is the thick, Mary is the snack.
Mary is the snack.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yes. So, like, if no one ever said their names.
There is a movie that does that.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
12 Angry Men.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read that play
It
in
only
English
works
class.
visually. It works really, really well visually.
Well, you read it in English class. I was like,
That's
a
true,
play.
yeah.
But,
Yeah.
like, everyone's assigned someone. Like, you don't read it.
Right. You don't read it by yourself.
No, it's
right?
not a novel.
No. It's meant to be like a visual story. And 12 Angry Men, also absolute masterpiece of a movie.
Super good.
Masterpiece of a story. We did that at high school for theater, and I
Yeah.
did not audition for that one. And I regret that because it is an awesome, awesome show. This story perfectly balances the show don't tell, like knife blade, no pun intended.
Yeah, they're just called juror.
Yeah,
1
juror
through
number
12.
one, but they don't even say their names in like they just say like they do
never
like number each other,
introduce.
but they never say like listen juror number 6, listen 6.
Yeah.
You shut up 3.
You killed my mother, too.
This is friggin' Sesame Street. That kid is guilty.
I'm juror 4.
6 counts of guilty.
That would be so funny as a Muppet short.
Sesame Street 12 Angry Men.
That'd be so good.
But this
Bringing back the classics.
the story is magnificent because the visuals of the story tell you so much more than just what is like being told, right? Characters only tell. The dialogue in that show, there is no showing in any of the dialogue. All the dialogue is telling.
Right.
Right? I
Because they're saying exactly what they're thinking.
exactly what they're thinking. So I guess there is showing in the way they say things,
Right.
There's the one juror who just like wants to go to the baseball game the whole time, and there's another juror who's like an old guy who respects people, and
Right.
like so
Classic old guys.
classic old guys, always respecting
Always
people.
respecting people.
So the show is very, very good at capturing that feeling, and
Yeah.
then visually it captures that very well as well. But 12 Angry Men almost exclusively tells through its dialogue.
That's interesting. Because we don't actually ever see the internal dialogue of any of the characters.
Right. Even in Shakespeare, right, they had like soliloquies where someone would step forward and be like, "What's good? It's me, Romeo. There's this 13-year-old in town."
She's 13? She was 15.
I know he's 17. I thought she was 13.
Oh, gosh.
Hang on, we got to fact check this, Jamie. How old is Juliet? Is Gandalf then? Juliet.
Juliet.
13 years old and
No.
approaching her 14th birthday.
No.
No.
That's why it ends the way it does.
Romeo. It's actually a comedy, right? Because the pedophile dies at the end.
Well, if he's 17,
Oh, that's right.
he's a minor too.
Romeo is given the age of 16, and
Oh.
Juliet is given the age of 13. That's gross. Teenagers are gross.
Yeah. That's probably why it ends the way it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
Show, don't tell.
Oh, right. I'm sitting here just thinking of a dumb 13-year-old.
All right. Let's see what other notes I wrote down
Friggin'
on my work branded notebook paper.
that was nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, these were some pretty good points. Yeah, feelings affect actions. I like what he said about feelings also, like you can show feelings through the descriptions of settings and the description
Yes.
of conflicts. Like I tried to do that in Bales, where I tried to make one of the main locations Arkham. I try to make Arkham a living place, right? I try to make the setting its own character.
Right.
I've heard people say that in their writing before, right? Like, I try to, make this place feel alive.
Something that I actually want to ask a question about. I know we don't really ask questions. We're supposed to know everything. But, so in his video, he says, what does your character focus on when he's in the setting? Because that's going to show their own attitude towards this place. But what if the place is actually, like, kind of nice? Like, it's a nice, warm, happy place, but the character walking into it is like mega sad. How is the reader supposed to know that it is a nice place and not like this room of shadows and sadness?
It's kind of a tough balance, right? If it's in like a visual medium,
Right.
you can do it pretty well, actually. Something like Avatar does this really, really well, actually.
Right, and then you have the acting of the character and
Sure.
stuff. But like specifically in writing.
Specifically in writing, the way that you do it is you do explain how things are. You literally explain how things are. So you would say, like in Arkham, right? The Bales shows up and people are having a party. And there's lights and there's laughter, and she overhears lots of people having different kinds of conversations. And Bales stays to the shadows, and she doesn't interact with them, and she specifically remarks and thinks about things that people are saying with a less than confident or less than praiseworthy tone, right?
Right. So would you shoot a scene like that? Would you shoot it from her perspective, or would you shoot it from outside of her and she is just kind of like drudging through this scene, but it is kind of happy? Or is it like shadows and darkness?
Me personally,
With like eerie music.
I mean, the music is kind of eerie. Me personally, I would have like one shot of the place being like really big and bright and beautiful and exciting, because it is supposed to be, you need to capture that mood. And then after that, I would focus on things from her perspective. I would keep her kind of like closed in and tight shots. I would have her moving in between the shadows. I'd have the shadows slanted, and her kind of like ducking from shadow to shadow and to different groups. When she does finally get caught and pulled into one of these groups to have a conversation, I don't identify anybody but one character in this conversation. Everybody else is talking over each other. Everyone else are just eyes and silhouettes on purpose, right? To create this feeling of you are seen, but you do not fathom what's happening around you or who is happening around you. I think that is how I would do it.
Right.
Simply because Bales is kind of a party pooper, right? In this scene, she isn't happy to be there, but she has to be there. So from her perspective, everything else is kind of encroaching. Like the happiness isn't like dampening her day. She is just like annoyed by the fact that everyone's so happy around her.
Right.
And once again, by making the scene and the location kind of its own place with its own kind of collective emotion and collective like identity, you can have those things bounce back and forth like in a normal conversation, right? Normal conversations are just us trying to communicate our emotions and then interpreting them and then communicating back, right?
Right.
And so it's a lot easier, at least in my mind, to try to personify places and conflicts and even the feelings themselves, to try to personify the feelings that characters have, because it's a lot easier for us to understand character interaction than like weather and human interaction, right? Like weather doesn't have feelings. Weather doesn't care. Weather is just this thing that happens.
Right.
But if a storm has a personality, a face, an intention, then you can understand, oh, this is a hateful storm. And this is a character who's fighting against a hateful storm.
Right. Maybe it's a storm inside.
Yeah, maybe. It could be.
It could be. So next time you go out in the rain, it could just be inside of you.
Gross. Thank you so much for listening to Sibling Scribbles. My name is Johnny.
And my name is Marin. Next time you are writing, or actually, how much time do we have left?
We're going over right now.
Oh, okay.
Why is that?
Never mind.
You want to say something else? Say something else.
I was going to say when you're like designing a character, there's ways to show, don't tell.
Please do. Go.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
When you're designing a character, there are ways to describe the things that they are experiencing inside of them just through their character design. There are things that you can do, especially in the face, that are going to elevate that design to make them less of a one-dimensional character. A one-beat character has a design that is very simple. This is the happy cheerleader character. She is going to be bubbly. She is going to have kind of interesting shapes, and she's going to be very bright. All of her gestures are going to be kind of fun. But then if she is the happy cheerleader who is, I don't know,
her boyfriend is cheating
anemic,
on her. Oh, yes. Yeah.
right? Like, then that's going to be a different thing where she's not just like pretty and skinny. She's going to be a little bit like more skeletal in her face, and she might have little circles under her eyes. So, and then if we want to bring her even further, she's anemic because her boyfriend is a jerk. Or
sure, her boyfriend's a jerk, which is actually a projection of her dad being a jerk.
Right. So that makes her into a three-dimensional character. So we have these different conflicts, these different sides to her. But actually she is a sweet person, but because this thing is happening to her, she is pretty depressed, and she's doing this thing.
Hit us with an example.
Of a character design. Let's see here.
That shows what kind of person this is. Just go to the classics. Go to the best ones. Give me Porco Rosso.
So in Porco Rosso, we see the guy who designs the ships.
Right.
So Porco comes to this guy. He is specifically his person that he goes to. His character isn't just like, he's just a designer guy. Like, he's a designer guy, but all of the men in his family have all gone to war. So he's completely by himself with all of the women, and he still has to run this business. And so if you look at his face and his character design, anime doesn't do all the time a really good job of just showing interesting character, because they're like, they're important, let's make their hair green, and you're like, oh, okay. I now know who's the main character.
Yep. I've clocked them.
Right. But with the Porco Rosso especially, the designer guy, he's got like scars on his face, and he wears glasses that never show his eyes. He's trying to hide this emotion of the pain that he's feeling and the pressure that, even though he is kind of conniving a little bit, you know, he's got a little bit of an edge to him.
Right.
He's
Sneaky
like,
trickster fella.
He's like, Porco, you're still paying me the full amount. And then some. But, you know, he still he hides his eyes, and he's kind of shorter, and that's something that you wouldn't, you know, typically see. And so, you know, that also adds another edge to him. On the other end of the scale, we see a character like, I don't know, Barbie. Barbie is a perfect one-note character. There is nothing happening behind Barbie's eyes. She is cute and she is fun, and she's just supposed to help girls to, you know, laugh and to love themselves.
And that's okay.
And that's her purpose.
That's okay. We take the designer guy from Porco Rosso. His role is very important. He shows a side of the war to the audience, and he contrasts Porco in such a way that is very important for the story. So you do get a lot out of just his physical design.
Right.
You can show what kind of man this is without him ever saying like, I was in the war and I've killed 35 men, and like, you don't need him to say that crap. You know what kind of things this man has done. But like we talked about last week with one-note characters serve a very important purpose.
Right.
And it's not a bad thing to have a one-note character as long as you're using that tool correctly.
We need that beat to go off of sometimes. We need the bully. We need the peppy kid. We need the nerd.
Yeah.
They're important. That's why there are those stereotypes and those archetypes. Because we need them for our brain to process characters that are deeper. We have to see that first stereotype to be able to say, oh, okay, but there's something not quite right about them. And then we see that other dimension to it. Mm-hmm. And that makes it very interesting.
You see a character like, who's a character who kind of evolves, and like you can see that through their visual storytelling language.
Zuko.
Oh, duh.
Zuko is probably one of the coolest, because he has 3 seasons to go through visual development too. And, you know, he's a great example.
Zuko's
for lots
pretty
of
fantastic,
things.
yeah.
But I mean, at the beginning, he's wearing clothes that are very large on him, very prim, you know, shiny, sharp. You know, his hairstyle's very drastic.
Is there anything about his initial character design in book 1 that indicates to the audience that he is going to go through a change?
He doesn't seem to fit in the same way as all of the other Fire Nation gentlemen do. I mean, you see everyone else in their stuff and they're like, oh, they're strong. And you see Zuko, and he just looks like he needs something else. Like he needs his clothes fitted, because he's 16.
He's like a kid wearing his dad's t-shirt.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's trying so hard. And you're like, oh, he's a bad guy. He's wearing sharp
right.
shoulder
He's wearing
pads.
pointy things.
But you're like, those are way too big on him.
Yeah, they look silly. He's shorter than everybody else that he meets.
Right.
He's really, really, really pale compared to the rest of the Fire Nation soldiers.
He just seems like he was put into a box, but he's growing
out of
in
that
a different direction.
Oh, yeah.
Than the box is letting him grow.
The scar. The
Right.
scar is a huge indicator that there is depth to his character. It shows the
Right.
audience. Doesn't just tell them, like, my dad hates me. It's like, it's a constant reminder
Right.
that Zuko was hurt by fire, by the thing that he professes to love.
Yeah.
Right? That is visually show, don't tell in a beautiful, beautiful way.
Yeah. So I think like with visual development, when you're designing characters, do not give them green hair and say they're special. Do not give them the striking, silver blue eyes because they're the chosen one. It's like there are other, yes, those are, things to keep in mind when you're doing these
Right,
things.
but that doesn't give them depth. There are
Right.
ways to give a character visual depth in any kind of format.
Right.
Through Harry Potter, for heaven's sakes.
Yes.
Right? The glasses, the messy hair, the eyes that look like his mom, the hair that looks like his dad, the scar on his forehead, right?
Percy Jackson, he has striking eyes. He's very messy. He has very pointed features. And then later in the books, he gets the streak of gray hair.
Right.
And that's adding to his depth as a hero. And the more beads he has on his necklace and the scars he gets.
Percy's a great example because Percy starts out pretty one note, I would say.
Right.
Percy's character is kind of designed to be static, and his
because
staticity.
he's 12.
Right, because he's 12. But him being static is kind of a good thing because the rest of the world hates the fact that someone like him is stubborn in his goodness.
Right.
So it's once again, there's lots of ways as long as you're aware of what you're doing, and as long as you're purposeful, that's not the word, as long as you are purposeful, I guess, in your actions.
Explicit, if you're...
It's a word, it's like determined, but it's I've been forgetting this word recently.
Word that means... What was the word?
Purposeful. Word that means purposeful. We're just Googling it because we can't handle this. Determined, resolute, resolved, steadfast, enthusiastic, ambitious. It's none of these. That's so weird.
Deliberate?
Deliberate! It's deliberate. Oh, that's it.
Thesaurus.com.
I knew it was like determined. Deliberate. As long as you're deliberate with your decisions.
Yeah.
And you recognize the consequences of those decisions on your readers.
Right.
That's what matters.
Yeah. It's... So when you're writing and when you are designing and when you are creating these areas, it's important to show.
Right.
But it's also very important to tell your audience.
Right.
To say, this is what I want you to know that's important.
Right. Here's the context that allows you to feel these things at their height.
Right.
I am very excited. I am going to have my second draft of Bales ready to read this week.
Yay.
And so I'm about to experience unintentional showing and telling. It looks like we are out of time, though.
Yep. My name is Marin.
My name's Johnny. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Podbean, Spotify. You can read our webcomic on shepherdcalledbales.com.
Yep.
And you can find us next week when we drop the next episode.
Stay creative.